This week we begin to read Sefer Bamidbar, the final book of the Torah. You might ask, aren't there 5 books in the Torah? We haven't read Dvarim yet. So what do I mean? Sefer Bamidbar was intended to be the final chapter of the wandering of them in the wilderness. We had only small time before left Egypt, and we had received the Torah. We have built the Mishkan, and now it is time to go into the land of Israel. And the entire structure of the Parsha Bamidbar points to this, that we are getting ready to go into the land of Israel. We take a census, not simply for a population count, but we take a census accounting of anyone who is over 20, male is over 20, and is Yotzei Tzava, and is going out to war, is going out to the Tzava, to the army, to the legions. The purpose of the census is to know that there are 603,550 able-bodied soldiers in the Israelite army. Now, we find in the basic structure of this week's Parsha is really focused around the census and these preparations. We begin with the counting of all of Bnei Israel by tribes. And then we also have the encampments around the Mishkan, and which we'll go into detail in a moment. We have the census of the Levi'im who did not go out to war, redemption of the firstborn, and then finally, between this week and next week's Parsha, we have all the charges, all the jobs of the different Levite families. Going back to the original census, 603,550 able-bodied Israelite soldiers. They're counted according to the tribes. When we take a look at the parasha and the order that the tribes are counted, we find an oddity. We find that it seems that everyone is almost counted by the order that they were born in, or maybe they're grouped by the people who their mothers. We find an oddity just 3 tribes in. We first find the counting of the tribe of Reuven. The reason being, the Rabbeinu Bachya explains, because Reuven is the Bechor. Reuven was Yaakov's firstborn son. Then we move on to Shimon, because Shimon really was the second son. But then we have none other than Gad. What is God doing there? God wasn't one of the children of Leah. So Rabbeinu Bachya explains that Gad, indeed, was actually the Bechor, was really the firstborn of the Shfachot, of the maidservants of Yaakov. Thus he's counted third. And the rest of the tribes, from Yehuda, Yisachar and Zvulun, and then Ephraim, Menashe, and Binyamin, and then Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, they're all counted in their own groups. Each tribe had their own encampment, or rather each group of 3 tribes had encampments around the Mishkan. We have in the east, we have Yehuda, Issachar, and Zvulun. When they travel first. You might ask, well, why specifically in the east? Why not north? Hey, we're going north. Well, if you look at, it's an interesting thing, if you look at ancient maps, the entire world isn't oriented on a north-south axis. It's actually oriented on an east-west axis, with the east facing up and the west really facing down. And in ancient thought, Mizrach, the east, was really the way forward. The first place is where the sun is rising, and it's really west where the sun is setting. So though they are, Yehuda is encamping in the east, it's Yehuda, Yisachar, and Zvulun that are all traveling together first. After that, they would have in the south Reuven, Shimon, and Gad, and they would follow them. After them, Ephraim, Menashe, and Binyamin in the west, and then in the north, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Let's move on to the actual counting of the Levi'im. We find later on in the parasha we have a counting of the Levi'im. We have a total of 22,000 Levi'im total, which is interesting because the number of Levi'im is a lot less than most of the other, or rather almost all the other tribes, um, the more that the tribes were worked in Egypt, the more that they actually became, ironically, that they became, Hashem helped them become and have more kids. Thus, the Levi'im were not working in Egypt. They were considered priests, similar to the Egyptian priests who also didn't work. Therefore, they were not as fertile. The next point that the Parsha mentions is also the Yichus, is also the lineage of the Levi'im. And there's also there's an oddity there too. It says, "Ve'ele toldot Aaron u'Moshe b'yom diber Hashem et Moshe b'Har Sinai." These are the offspring of Aaron and Moshe on the day that Hashem spoke with Moshe at Har Sinai. The only problem is, though we're expecting the lineage of Aaron and Moshe, we find the lineage of the Kohanim. We find the lineage of the priests, which are the sons of Aaron. They're not Moshe's sons. Chazal pick up on this, the sages pick up on this, and they explain that when one teaches another one Torah, and he creates their spiritual identity, it's as if he becomes their parent. It's as if he's given them life. And therefore, because Moshe was their primary teacher, he's also counted as their father. And with that, we go into the next part of the Parsha, which is the redemption of the firstborn. We know how many Levi'im there are. We know that the Levi'im, 22,000, they're counted right after the redemption of the firstborn. But what's the reason that the Levi'im were chosen over the Bechorot, over the firstborn? Why did the firstborn lose their status as helpers to the Kohanim? The answer is that the Bechorot, the firstborn, participated in the sin of the golden calf, the Chet of Egel HaZahav. And with that, they lost their right to be the helpers in the Mishkan, in the Mikdash, in the temple service. And what was it so special that the Levi'im did that made them worthy of replacing the Bechorot? Rabbeinu Bachya explains that when one comes close a little bit, shekol shemakriv atzmo ma'at, one comes close a little bit, makrivim oto harbe, Hashem brings him in a lot more. It takes sometimes the avodah, the service, can be very difficult, but if we even just take baby steps, we reach out a little bit for Hashem's hand, Hashem grabs us and pulls us in. What an important message as Bnei Yisrael are about to enter the land of Israel. They're about to start working the fields. They're going to have to deal with real life. They're leaving. They're supposed to be. The plan was they're supposed to leave the life of the Mikdash, of the Mishkan, of everyone camping around the Mishkan, and everyone going to classes every day, Torah classes by Moshe. They're leaving that life of the yeshiva at Har Sinai, and they're moving on towards the land of Israel, where they're going to have to work hard. They're going to have to start businesses. They'll be in charge of the economy. They're going to have to deal with very, very real world problems. How important it is to remember that when we just go a little bit, if we bring Hashem a little bit into our lives, Hashem comes rushing in. When we stick out our hand to Hashem, Hashem grasps us and pulls us with a mighty force. The Parsha finishes and ends with the job of the family of Kahat. Kahat is also Moshe and Aaron's family, and they had the holiest task of all the Levi'im, which was to carry the implements, the kelim of the Mishkan. That include all the specific little kelim, like ladles and spoons and things like that, but it also included many of the kelim that we're familiar with, the vessels that we're familiar with, like the aron, the menorah, the shulchan, the mizbeach hazahav, and the mizbeach hanachoshet, the ark, the menorah, the table that had the showbread on it. We had the golden altar where it was offered incense, and the ketoret, and then finally the copper mizbeach, which was the outer mizbeach where all the korbanot were brought. The message of this week's Parsha is one of preparation, is one of getting ready to go into Israel. What a tragedy it is that this isn't the last book of the Torah. What a tragedy it is that the Sefer Bamidbar does not finish the Torah. And then unfortunately we have an extra 38 years of wandering around in the desert before the generation that left Egypt dies off and a new generation that didn't know slavery in Egypt rises up. What we can glean from this week's Parsha is that preparation and making ourselves ready and willing and open to Hashem's goodness, to Hashem's hand. When we stick our hands out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem grabs us very tight and pulls us right in. And what an important message that is for us who do live in the real world, who do have to deal with daily challenges, not always of the most spiritual type. Blessing to everyone is that we should be successful in these challenges and grasp Hashem's hand tightly. Shabbat Shalom.